And we're recording. So good evening, everybody. We'll get started here. What you're attending here is our Long Prairie River Watershed 1 Plan kickoff meeting. We're off to a good start with the process here, and part of it here is having this public introduction to the process. And we're looking forward to everybody's participation. We've got a lot of participation already, but we look forward to hearing from everybody tonight. First, to introduce myself, I am Adam Ossiford. I am the Planning and Zoning and the SWCD Division Director for Todd County. And the next thing I wanted to do is introduce our policy committee. Our policy committee is our decision-making group, comprised of our elected officials in both the SWCDs and the counties. And in some cases in this watershed planning process, it'd be watershed districts also, but the Long Prairie River does not have an organized watershed district, so that is not the case for this planning group. So I'll just run through in the direction that the river flows. First, is Jerry Rapp on? And if you are, Jerry, if you could unmute your line and just give a quick introduction of yourself. I don't know if I see him here. Well, and I know Jerry is a commissioner from Douglas County. He's on our policy committee. And then from Douglas SWCD is Bill Dropic, and I know that he is not going to be on the line tonight. And then from West Ottertail SWCD, John Walkup. I don't know if John was on or not. I don't see him.
Yes.
Oh, hey, John. Yes. Just give a brief introduction of yourself.
Okay, John Walkup, supervisor of West Ottertail Soil and Water District, and just assigned to this board as part of our Soil and Water District. We just got a real small portion of this. So.
Well, we appreciate you being here, John, and being a part of the process. Moving over to Todd County, our policy committee member is Barb Becker, but she is away on vacation, so our alternate Rod Erickson is on. I know you're there, Rod, if you want to unmute and just do a quick introduction.
Sorry, no, I'm there. Am I there?
There you
now?
Go.
All right, got it. My name is Rod Erickson. I've been a commissioner in Todd County for 8 years, just starting my third term. I am originally from Long Prairie, grew up in Long Prairie. I served the 3rd district in the county of Todd, which is the city of Long Prairie, and 2 townships, Long Prairie Township and Reynolds Township. And so happy to be on board, and we'll look forward to the future moving ahead.
All right, thank you, Rod. Is Dan Whitney on? Dan is representing Todd SWCD. I don't see Dan. So in our alternate there is Dale Catterhagen, but I don't believe either of them are on. And again, they're representing Todd SWCD. From Morrison County, Mike, is Mike on this evening?
Yes, I am.
Hey,
Mike Lemire, District 1, representing the western portion of Morrison County, and have the lakes of Chaminade, Fish Trap, and Lake Alexander. Welcome. Nice to be with you tonight.
Thank you, Mike. Is Dr. Bill Faber on?
Yes, sir.
Hey.
So this is Dr. Bill Faber. I am the District 1 Board Supervisor for the Morrison SWCD, same district as Mike, but I'm a Board Supervisor, and I am also the Chair of this Policy Committee for the One Watershed, One Plan, One Plan, One Watershed. I forget what sheet this is for the Long Prairie River, and I look forward to us moving ahead with this process. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Bill. I was going to give you a special shout out for being the chair, so thanks for mentioning that. So our next thing here, I want to just do a really brief tutorial. I'm going to share a photo here. So what you should be seeing, I think, is a screen similar to what you see on your screen. I just want to do a brief tutorial here so everybody's on the same page of the buttons and what to expect throughout the evening here. The first thing you need to be aware of is this mute button in the bottom left. For pretty much everybody, I think, should be on mute right now. There will be an interactive portion throughout the night here. And if you want to speak, you'll have to click this mute button to unmute yourself, and it'll look like this. Right now it has a red slash through it, and then you'll have the opportunity to speak. The stop video here, I think a lot of people have their video off right now, which is great. It helps with the bandwidth that we have. But when our speaker is up here in just a little bit, he wants everybody to turn your video on if you have a camera so that he can see your faces and you can interact with him a little bit. So after Deja does the introduction, please, if you have one, turn your video on, and then you can be a little more interactive. And then after that, you can certainly turn it back off or keep it on, whatever you prefer. The next important thing you need to know is this chat function. You'll see a little bubble pop up if there's a chat. Throughout the night, there will be things posted in there so you can click on the links and check that stuff out. When we get to the end, there is a survey or a poll that will be done, and the link to that will be posted in this chat. So please, your options are to click that link, but ideally, if you have a separate device, a smartphone, tablet, something else, to get that link into your other device so that you can participate in that poll later in the evening. So the link to that will be posted in the chat. You can also use this chat if you don't want to talk over anybody, or you don't feel comfortable speaking, or you want to make a point, ask a question throughout the night. I will be monitoring this chat, so feel free at any point to make comments in here, and I will try my absolute best to keep up with them and make sure that everybody's questions and comments are answered too. And then the last thing here, on the very top, this view button. When you click on that, you'll see a couple options. You want to make sure that there's a check mark next to speaker view. When that check mark's there, then when our guest speaker is going through his presentation, and you'll see him on the large screen and not just a bunch of small boxes. So click that, make sure it's on speaker view, and you should be all set for the rest of the evening. Otherwise, if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them to make sure everybody understands. Otherwise, Deja, if you are ready to do your introduction, I think you're up.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Wow. Good evening, everybody. My name is Deja Anton. I am the district manager for Todd Soil and Water, and really happy to see everybody here. We got a count at 66 right now. That's awesome. Before we begin to introduce our speaker, I just wanted to share a little story. I was privy to a conversation that a gentleman had. He was quite frustrated with the events, that have occurred over the last year. And then he kind of slapped his hand down on the counter and he says, and now I hear we're in a watershed. And so I think it's real important for us to all think about the fact that whether you were living back when the Stone Age and rubbing sticks together, or maybe you're, were in the 60s and you were protesting, or you're flying above 20,000 feet in the air, flying to France, or diving into Jamaica's waters underwater, you are in a watershed. Simply put, a watershed is a piece of land. So it's not government, it's not anything but a piece of land. There's no rules on that land. There's nothing on that land except for what people make it. And when I say nothing, I'm talking about, anything that people don't want, It's really, that's all it is a piece of land. And I guess I'm so happy to be on this particular piece of land as opposed to Chicago's watershed or some other place. So I just wanted to kind of point that out to anybody who might be confused when we say the word watershed, our fancy jargon. That's all it is a piece of land. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest speaker, our keynote speaker. We decided to have him on because we wanted to do something for our community, not just take information from you, but do something with you, something fun and lively. And I think the whole evening will be enjoyable with the other information that you'll be able to participate in and give input. So tonight's keynote is humorous speaker Charles Marshall is without a doubt one of the funniest and most original professional speakers providing corporate content today. Charles is the founder and president of Empower Resources, and he presents all over, flies 100,000 miles every year, giving thousands of motivational and humorous speeches across the country, including, you know, Corporate 500, all of those high-level entities. He has 20 years of full-time experience. He is the author of several books, including The 7 Powers of Success and I'm Not Crazy, but I Might Be a Carrier. He also has produced and performed 2 full-length comedy videos titled Fully Animated and I'm Just Saying. So without any further ado, I would like to encourage everybody to get your view so it's on speaker mode, and then introduce to you Mr. Charles Marshall.
Hey guys, how's everyone doing? If you can hear me, if you can see me, give me a wave like this. How about that? Let me say, all right, lots of hand waves. I'm just so excited to be with you this evening. Well, it's not to be with you there, at least to be with you virtually. This is still cool. I am speaking to you from the Springfield, Missouri area. I've lived here 3 months, and I thought I might just start off by telling you a little bit about myself. I am a family man. Do we have any family folks with us tonight? Anybody? Not a lot of enthusiasm there. Did you see that? A lot of people going, yeah, whatever. But I'm excited about it. Maybe one of the reasons I'm excited about it is because we just celebrated my son's birthday a couple of weeks ago. And the thing he's really into is he is into superheroes. He loves the Avengers movies. He loves Justice League. So what we thought we would do is we would get him all the action figures. And you should have seen his face light up on his birthday when he tore into the presents. He's going, oh, Dad, this is so cool. You got me Batman. Oh, boy, you got me Spider-Man. You got me Thor. And immediately he starts playing with him. He goes, Dad, what would happen if Thor attacked Iron Man like in the movies? And then maybe Spider-Man can attack Batman. That would never happen in the movie. And then he points at me. He goes, Dad, you can be the bad guy. And so he starts attacking me with the action figures. And you know what you do with your parent. You play along, for crying out loud. So he's running around. We're both running around the house. He's going, Dad, the Batman's getting you. And I'm running around. I'm going, don't give me Batman. Don't give me Spider-Man. And it would be so cute. He's like 23 years old. So I'm like, come on, man, get a job. I'm kidding. But I'm excited about being here. Birthdays are a sore subject for me. I'm in my mid-50s, rounding towards 60. I'm looking at the business end of 60 years old, and birthdays were very intimidating. Aging was intimidating for me. But then I thought, come on, Charles, you are a motivational speaker. You know that knowledge equals power. So I got on the internet and I started researching it, and I found out that 2 things happen to you when you get into your 50s. This is just science. 2 things happen to you. Number 1, you lose your short-term memory, right? You forget words and phrases that you just said. You don't even remember you just said them. The second thing that happens is you lose your short-term memory. You forget words and phrases. Some of you are looking at me like, oh, poor thing is happening to him right now, and he doesn't even know it. Well, I'm excited about being here. Like I said, this is virtual. I do normally fly. Well, before March last year, I flew a lot. I would fly about 100,000 miles a year, not as much these days. I'm splitting my time between in-person events, they're coming back, and virtual events. But I have flown a good bit. Does anybody in here fly a good bit when things are normal? Just anybody in the meeting? Has anybody ever been on a plane before? How about that? Has anybody ever seen a picture of an airplane? How about that? A picture? You've seen pictures? Okay, good. Awesome. This is my crowd. I'm doing a program tonight for you entitled Real Heroes Don't Wear Spandex. In real life, heroes aren't guys and gals like the Avengers flying through the air with wearing tight spandex or leather. Real heroes are people who make a difference with their lives, using their time, their talent, their education, their passions to help other people, to make the world a better place. And I gotta tell you, I think that anyone who would attend a meeting to have input on soil and water conservation, I think that person is approaching a hero status. I think part of being a hero is being involved, getting involved with what's going on in your community and having input. And I love that I'm involved with a meeting full of people like that. So tonight I'm going to talk about 3 characteristics that every hero has. The first characteristic is that real heroes own their choices. Everything you do is a choice. You chose to be in this meeting right here. You made a decision. And I know this involves 2 people, but if you're married, that was a choice. Do we have any married people in the meeting? Even less enthusiasm than the family question. Did you see that? I'm getting, I want to tell you, this is a very, very, very special night for me. This day, I am celebrating my 32nd wedding anniversary. 32 years. And I'm going to do something that I have never done in any meeting ever. I am the loud, outgoing one in my marriage, and my wife would be happy if she was never on camera, if she was never on stage. But tonight, I thought, as a special treat for you, I'm so proud of my wife and the fact that I've been married 32 years. I wanted to introduce her to you. Would you guys like that? Would that be okay? If I could just bring her on just for a second. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please welcome my wife, Laura Marshall. Here she is. See, that's not even a joke. It's a real person. I really am married. Well, as far as you know, I may have hired a spokesmodel. You don't know. You don't know me. I could have done that just for this event. But it's so exciting. We're married. And do you remember 32 years ago, tonight, right now, at this time, do you remember at this time, 32 years ago, what we were doing? Because at this time, we'd had our wedding, we'd gone to the reception, and we checked in at the hotel. And I believe at this very time, you and I think I'd fallen asleep, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what was going on. And we're just getting honest with one another. So anyway, it's so weird that now Laura and I, this is the weirdest thing, now that we've been married 32 years, we are now considered the older married couple. Isn't that right? And people come up and they ask us what our secret to having a long marriage is. Isn't that right? They come up and they say, hey, Charles and Laura, what's your big secret? I don't mind telling you. Anybody want to know what our big secret is? I'll tell you if you want. Okay, here it is. One person raised their hand, so that I'll do it. Here's our big secret. Ever since we've been married, since the very first week, my wife and I, Laura and I, go out on a date every single week, no matter what. It's a priority. We go out on a date. Oh no, not with each other. I'm sorry. That was, I can see how you might have misunderstood that. No, she's not going to do that. But she did say something really sweet recently. Somebody asked her how she likes having a husband. Like, cause I'm a little much. Hey, I'm a little much sometimes. And somebody asked her, how do you like having a husband after 32 years? And her answer, her answer blessed me so much that I wanted to share it with you tonight. She said that she likes having a husband so much she is thinking about getting another one. So I thought, I don't know about you, but that was touching. I know you have your microphones on mute, but could you just give her a wave of appreciation and thank her for coming on? I love you very much. You're a hero to me. Give me a kiss before you go. Look, mwah. That's my girl. All right. So on with the program. I thought, 32 years. Oh, by the way, honey, this is your wedding anniversary present. This right here. Okay. So what constitutes a hero? The heroes own their choices. even when bad stuff happens. This last year, has any bad stuff happened to you? Has anything happened to you that you didn't particularly enjoy over the past year? Heroes recognize that bad stuff happens, but they keep going anyway. They realize that they can't control what happens to them in their lives, but they can control what they do about it. I'll give you an example. In 1987, I was driving down the road in my 1976 Ford Pinto. For those of you too young to know what a Ford Pinto was, it was an upscale sports car. It's something like a Maserati or a Ferrari today. Yes, some of you remember. And if you're one of the fortunate few that were lucky enough to own one of these vehicles, you would be known throughout your community as a person of refinement, distinction, and taste. I think I have a JPEG on my computer. I'll pull one up. Let me pull up that JPEG on my computer. There we go. Isn't she a beauty? That's my baby right there. Look at that fine detailing, the hatchback. You gotta love that. Well, I was driving down the road and I was T-boned. I went through an intersection and I was T-boned by a 1980 Volvo four-door sedan, instantly breaking 4 of my ribs, separating my AC joint and turning my left shoulder into hamburger with the driver's side door shattered. I somehow managed to pull the car over to the road. You say, Charles, what would that look like? Let me pull up another picture on my computer. It looked a lot like that right there. See that little bar, that little safety bar? That made my life. I managed to somehow pull the car over, and then brave people ran up and they grabbed me and they pulled me about 20 to 30 feet away from the Pinto, because one of the bonus features of the Ford Pinto was that they would immediately, spontaneously burst into flame with little or no provocation. Am I right? Anybody remember the Pinto? They were known for that. I'm not making this up. Don't tell them I'm not making this up. We remember a strong, you could be driving down the road, a strong breeze comes up. End of your story. It was an exciting time to be alive. Honest to goodness, listen, my generation, I don't want to get all old fogey on you, but my generation, we didn't need extreme sports. We didn't need to bungee jump or parachute off of buildings. We drove Pintos. And it was so exciting because every day you got behind the wheel of one of those things, it was so exciting because you knew it could be your last one. It was exhilarating. It made you feel alive. Anyway, so there I am. I'm laying there on the side of the road. I'm broken and I'm bleeding. And I only had 2 thoughts going through my mind. My first thought was, I remember when I grew up, my mama told me to always make sure, you know where I'm going with this? Always make sure I wore clean underwear every day. No matter what, because you might get in an accident, you might need to go to the hospital. So always make sure you wear clean underwear. So as I am laying there, broken and bleeding, I'm trying to think about it. I'm thinking about it. I remember that I put a pair on that morning, but I'm trying to remember. I'm thinking that I'm wondering, because after the accident, I was wondering if they were still clean. Because it was a heck of an accident. I thought I might have had 2 accidents. I'm being real with you. The second thing that I had thought about, I was thinking I needed some kind of medicine for my day to get better. So I asked the paramedics, can you give me anything? They said, no, sir. Our job is to stabilize you and to monitor your vitals. And then I went to the hospital. I said, in the emergency room, can you give me anything? No, sir. I'm sorry. Our job is to just test you. We won't be able to give you any medicine until after we do all our tests. After about 2.5 hours after the accident, 2.5 hours after the accident, they finally gave me some hospital grade pharmaceuticals. Raise your hand. Give me a little wave if you've ever had hospital grade pharmaceuticals. Has anybody in here ever had hospital grade? No, I meant legally. Hold on, legally Has anybody in here ever had, okay, not as many hands, I get that, not as many hands, that's fine. A lot of people on this call grew up through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and those were wild times. I get it. So I'm laying there in the hospital, and the nurse walks in right when I was chilling out, finally resting. Into my room walks Nurse Ratchet. Everybody get that reference? Nurse Ratchet. Think mean nurse. She walks over to me and she takes her hands, and she takes two of her hands and she starts pressing on my bladder. She doesn't say hello. She doesn't say boo. She doesn't say howdy. She just starts pressing on my bladder. Does that seem weird to anybody else in here but me? Does that seem weird? That seems weird. We don't do that in Missouri. Do you guys just do that to one another when you greet one another in Minnesota? Is that how you greet one another in Minnesota? Hello, how are you? We don't do that here. But she was doing that. I go, ma'am, what are you doing? She said, I am checking to see if you need to void your bladder. I go, okay, well, I don't need to. I appreciate you checking, but I don't need to. She says, sir, you might not know if you need to. You might be in shock. And if you don't void your bladder, your system might get septic and it could poison you. I said, ma'am, please, I really don't need to. She said, sir, if you don't void your bladder, I'm going to have to cath you. Yes, this is the Long Prairie Watershed meeting. Okay, hey, Fred, you found the right meeting. I'm just reading the chat to you because I'm a full service speaker. I just want to make sure. You see some guy talking about getting cath and he doesn't know what he's going. This doesn't look like a watershed meeting. I get that. I understand that. That's understandable. She said, sir, if you don't void your bladder, I'm going to have to cath you. I said, ma'am, I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. She said, sir, cath stands for catheter. I go, I'm sorry, I still don't know what that means. So she started explaining it to me. And I'm listening, I'm going, yeah, you got a little long tube, yeah, and then it's got a little bag, and then you take the other end of that tube, and then you know what? I think I need to void my bladder now. But it was traumatic. That's my point. It was traumatic and it was uncomfortable and I didn't like it. And it traumatized me even to this day. Even today, when my wife and I are getting ready to go on a trip, she'll ask me, she'll say, honey, do you need to go to the bathroom before we go? And I'll be like, I don't know. Could you come check? Could you tell me? You tell me. I've lost my confidence, honey. I'll do whatever you tell me. I don't know. You tell me if I need to go to the bathroom. Why do I mention that? Did I have a choice? Yeah, absolutely. I had a choice. But when bad things happen, you still have a choice. If you're conscious, if you're awake, you have a choice. How does that affect being a hero? Well, heroes are always the people that go, we don't like how it happened. We don't like the situation, but we're going to choose what we can choose. We're going to handle what we can handle. We're going to move on. You don't, and here's the key. Here's the key. Never let other people dictate your behavior. That's the trick. Never let anybody else dictate your behavior. If they're ugly, if they handle themselves poorly, if they're rude, if they call you names, if they are acting improperly, you keep being you. Superman doesn't let Lex Luthor determine how he behaves. He always acts as Superman, right? So I'm saying that the next time something happens to you, instead of reacting, you choose your behavior, you react with dignity and elegance. I say, do what I do. Imagine yourself driving a Ford Pinto. That's your hint. Okay, then real heroes open their minds to possibilities. They're open. They problem solve. They are people who are open to hearing what other people have to say, because they're confident. They know they own their choices and they're confident about where they are in life. I learned to be open to ideas when I first got married. You wonder why I was bringing my wife on, because a lot of this I learned from her. When we first got married, we were sitting at a restaurant next to the table with the noisy kids. Has anybody here ever sat at the table next to the noisy kids? Can I see your hand if you've ever sat? Okay, well, let's try this. Has anybody here ever been the table with the noisy kids. Let me see. Okay, more hands on that one. Okay, we did too later. But at that point, we were sitting next to your family with the noisy kids, and I leaned over to my wife and I said, wow, those kids are really shousy, aren't they? She goes, what? I go, those kids at the table, they are really shousy. She goes, oh yeah. She goes, I guess so. Next couple weeks from there, we lived in an apartment at the time, and I heard some kids outside. I go, wow, I think those kids are really shousy. She goes, Dad, you keep using that word. What do you mean? I go, shousy, rambunctious, noisy, outgoing, loud, obnoxious. And she goes, honey, I've never heard that word before. I go, yes, of course it's a word. My mom used it all the time when we were growing up. She'd say, you kids need to quit being so shousy. And we would calm down. My wife said, listen, honey, I don't want to hurt your feelings. You can tell just from seeing her, she's sweet and she's quiet. She goes, honey, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I'm telling you, I've worked as my major was journalism in college, and I worked as a journalist for 5 years, and I'm telling you, shousy is not a word. I said, I will bet you $1 million that is a word. We don't bet real money. It's just play. It's all in good fun. Sometimes she wins, sometimes I lose. No, my point is nobody's keeping nobody's keeping score, but it's a great way to call somebody's bluff and get them to back down. But this time she didn't back down. She took my hand, she shook it, she says, I will take that bet. And that is when I felt my first little tremor of a doubt in my position. I said, well, fine, let's look it up. This was in 1989. I said, let's look it up. So I walked over to the computer. I pulled up the internet and I started Googling it. Has anybody seen an error in my timeline? Anybody? Okay. No internet, no Google in 1989. We pulled out like a 5-pound Merriam-Webster dictionary. We pulled it over and I started looking S-H, S-H-O-U, S-H-O-U, S-E. No shouts. Well, you can tell. Now that woman that you just saw, she's the smartest woman, one of the smartest people I've ever met. Not the smartest person. And she's very sweet. And she only has 2 volumes. She really only has 2 volumes. One, you can barely hear her. She talks like this right here. Or 2, mad at Charles. What do you mean you bought a boat without talking to me first? 2 volumes. That's what I'm saying. Not drawing from any personal story or anything. Just saying 2 volumes. But she saw me looking that up. And she goes, are you finding anything, honey? Real sweet and quiet, which drives me crazy. She still knows how to argue with me, even though she's quiet. I go, no, I'm not finding anything. She goes, wonder what it means when a word's not in the dictionary. That sent me over the edge. I said, fine, I'm calling Mama. She goes, go ahead. I go, oh. And by the way, you're talking about your little journalism degree. My mama used to be a high school English teacher, and therefore I'm going to get her on the phone and she's going to take you to school, girlfriend. That's what's about to happen up in here. She goes, fine, go ahead and call her. So I picked up the phone and I started dialing. Shigga-digga, shigga-digga-digga, shigga-digga, shigga-digga-digga, shigga-digga-digga. Nobody under 30 has any idea what I'm doing right now. Shigga-digga-digga, 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 shigga-digga-digga. Rotary phone, anybody know? Rotary phone. You spent like 20 minutes of your life making one long distance phone call. I got Mama on the line. I said, hey, Mom, it's your favorite son. No, listen, it's Charles. I need you to get on the phone and tell Laura that she is wrong. My mom said, well, I don't know if I can do that. What are you arguing about? I said, I need you to tell her that shall see is a real word. My mama laughed. She goes, well, honey, it was a real word to us. I was like, okay, hold on, Mama, hold on. Sweetheart, go in the other room. This is private. You don't need to hear that. What, Mama, what do you mean? What do you mean it was a real word to us? She said, well, when you kids were little, we lived right across the street from a family with 10 kids, and they were wide open, and they were loud, and they were noisy all the time. They were running through our yard. They were climbing our trees at all hours of the night. The name of that family was the Shouse family. And whenever you kids would act up, I would say to you kids, you need to quit being so shousy. I said, Mama, hold on. So you're telling me that not only have I been walking around using a made-up word for 27 years, but on top of that, I also just lost $1 million. But how many people in this meeting think that shousy is kind of an awesome word and you might use it? Let me see you wave. It's an awesome word. It's an awesome word. If I can get 3 or 4 of you doing that, I figured that I can do that all over the country and get my $1 million back. So my point is that to be a hero, you need to be open to what other people are offering, because you might just learn something and solve a problem. You might just be able to be the one that comes up with the original idea that changes the whole situation. And last but certainly not least, real heroes always leap into action. I love this. I love being around people. I like people who will come to a meeting like this. In the evening, you've already been at work and you'll log on to a meeting like this because you're taking an active interest in what goes on in your community, in your life. I love that. I love people who take action, because not everybody always does. Some people, a lot of people will just sit through life and watch it like it's a television program. And I can't stand that. I do not want to live my life that way. I want to be a person who steps up, and not just steps up, but steps up in service to my community. And I know a lot of people are like that, are in this meeting right now. I like it when businesses are like that too. There's one business that is a favorite of mine, and they are known for their action. They are known for stepping up. And the name of that business is Chick-fil-A. Do you guys have those Chick-fil-A's up there? And you guys have Chick-fil-A's anywhere? Well, they're just amazing, and they do real well in customer service. Do you know, in certain parts of the country, they were having trouble rolling out the vaccine because the lines were jamming up, and they were having lines all around. Let me ask, this is not conjecture, this is fact. Guess who they called to help them? Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A managers looked at their line and said, okay, this is where your bottleneck is. You need to have people out here doing this. And I love people who step up. I just love that. And everybody has a Chick-fil-A story. I'll tell you mine real quick. When my kids were younger, and I was kidding with you about my son being 23, he's actually just turned 17, just had his birthday, turned 17, and my daughter is 19. But when they were young, they were about 10 and 12 years old. We went to Chick-fil-A and we loaded up the tray with the waffle fries, with the chicken nuggets, chicken sandwiches, and 4 giant shakes. Can you see that? That's about the size of my head there. Look at that. See, it's about the size of my entire body. They're that big. That's how big Chick-fil-A shakes are. And we took them all over we took the tray of the stuff over to the table, and we unloaded it onto the table one at a time. Well, my son, he was 10 at the time, he was feeling very shousy that day. Did you see what I did there? He was feeling very shousy, and he's very demonstrative. I don't know where he gets it, but when he talks, his arms are going everywhere. And I could see his arm arching in slow motion toward that shake, and there was nothing I could do about it. I could see myself in slow motion go, no. But no, anyway, it happened anyway. His arm hit that shake, and boom, shake explosion as far as the eye can see, all across the Chick-fil-A floor, out the Chick-fil-A door, across the parking lot, into Burger King across the street. That's how massive it was. Well, my wife and I, we got down and we started cleaning up the mess, but out of nowhere materializes the Chick-fil-A mop and bucket brigade. They run out. I'm not making any of this up. They run out and they start mopping it up. And the weird thing is they are thanking us for this opportunity. Thank you so much for the opportunity to serve you today. We really appreciate this. We love having a job. And you're the reason, because you did this mess, and this is awesome. We're like, no, thank you. All together they went, it's our pleasure, because that's kind of their thing. Meanwhile, the guy who poured the shake has noticed, and here's the lovely thing, without anyone telling him, he noticed that the shake had been poured. He pours another shake, walks it over and puts it in front of my son. Now that would be a pretty good story of stepping up when nobody tells you to, just stepping up to try to make someone's day better. And that would be a pretty good place to end it, but that's only half of the story, because about 10 minutes later, my son now has sucked down about most of the shake, about 7/8 of the shake went again. Boom! Shake explosion all over the place again. The Chick-fil-A muffin bucket brigade, they run out. Again, they're thanking us, saying, thank you so much for this opportunity. This is even better the second time. Thank you so much. The only thing that can make this any better for us is maybe one of your kids that's thrown up. That would be really great. Where did they find these people? Meantime, the guy who poured the shake has poured another full shake, and he put it down at our table. Now I'm going, well, shoot, that boy just got himself another free shake. That's amazing. So all the rest of us are finished. He's going to be having a shake on the way home. So I took mine and I'm like, oh no, my shake fell. Better hurry, Chick-fil-A. I'm in danger of being unhappy. Why do I mention that? Because my question to you, and pay close attention here, is here it comes. My question to you is, what do you do when the shake hits the floor? See what I did there? What do you do? Because the shake's going to hit the floor sooner or later. What do you do when the shake hits the floor? Do you have a plan? Do you react? You go, oh man, I can't believe this stupid shakes always hit. Or do you go, okay, spilled shakes are part of life. I'm going to be a hero. I'm going to be a person who steps up, and I'm going to start fixing the problem. What does a shake look like? A spilled shake look like? Well, sometimes it's government regulations, if we're getting real with one another, right? Sometimes it's government slowness to act, or even the appearance of inaction. That can be frustrating. Sometimes it's people pointing fingers at one another instead of just cleaning up the mess. I would encourage you to be a hero. You got to be a person that just steps up and gets to work. Don't worry about the finger pointing. Don't worry about, well, you did so-and-so over here. Well, you did so-and-so over here. What matters is we clean up that mess and we move forward, because real heroes know that messes are part of life. That's just how it is. I burned through my time. I wish I had time to tell you about other heroes. Can I tell you a little something? That woman that you just saw, she's a hero of mine, because we have a special needs girl who is 19 years old who has epilepsy, and I see her every day making the choice of stepping up. My daughter has to have 24-hour, 7-day-a-week care. We have to be around her in case she has a seizure, and Laura has stepped up to take care of it, and I think that's awesome. I've had heroes who have invested in my life. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for people like you who stepped up and invested in people like me at times where I really, really needed it in life, like junior high. I grew up poor. Did anybody here grow up poor? Just real quick before we close it out. Anybody grew up poor? Let me see your hand if you grew up poor. Certainly, some people grew up poor. How about this? Did anybody in this meeting, did anybody grow up wearing hand-me-downs? Anybody wear hand-me-downs? Oh, now hold on. Did you really wear hand-me-downs? Jerome, I'm saying you wore hand-me-downs. You wore hand-me-downs? I wore hand-me-downs, and all I had was older sisters. You know what I'm saying? If you try looking tough on the playground wearing a yellow sundress and white sandals, people say, Charles, did you really wear your sister? I literally wore my sister's hand-me-down. I remember a conversation my mama was having me. I was in 5th grade, where she's trying to talk me into wearing my older sister's pants in the 70s. If you want to know what that looked like, it was a pair of blue jeans with flowers all over them. Something like that. And my mom said, you need to wear them. You need to wear them. Nobody will notice. Well, I wore them. And guess what? They noticed. Fortunately, all middle school kids are known for their compassion and understanding toward other middle school kids. Listen, that's all the time I have. Thank you for getting shousy with me tonight. I'm thrilled and honored that you let me be a part of your meeting. I think let's do this again next week over at my house. Wave your hand if you're planning on coming on by. Can I see Jerome, you're gonna be there? All right, several people. We'll put on some burgers and some hot dogs. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good meeting.
All right. All right, if you want to kind of show your hands and give a thank you to Charles Marshall coming in all the way from Missouri through Zoom. Good job, Charles. Thank you. All righty. I think we're going to move on to the next phase. And Adam, are you going to share?
Yes, I am. 1 second here. I just got to find you back. Okay, you should have the host now, Deja.
Okay. If I can follow my steps. Screen 3. All right. Can everybody see the screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Again, if you joined a little bit later, my name is Deja Anton. I'm with Todd SWCD. And we wanted to start with a little fun and having some good humor. I saw some chuckles. So I'm glad that we could join together in that way. And we wanted to move on to some pretty cool information about the Long Prairie Watershed. And then following the cool information that we each have to share, we're going to get into some discussions. The one thing that I wanted you to all be aware of is that as I'm speaking, feel free to unmute, feel free to ask a question, to stop, join in the conversation. This document that you're seeing in front of you, it's a what's called a story map. And this
Hey, Deja.
will be, yep.
I'm gonna mute everybody, so you'll have to unmute yourself again here in a second.
Okay.
Oh, you'll have to mute everybody because you're the host now. So if you go to click on participants.
Okay, I gotta find that.
It might be a drop down from the top.
Show grid. Show thumbnail.
Well, maybe it's not so bad now.
Okay. You want me just to keep going forward? Oh, okay. Can everybody hear me? Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, perfect. Not quite sure where I was at. So feel free to interact or ask questions or stop. This document, the story map, is pretty long and it's going to be available on our website for anybody to access, because there's all sorts of like little buttons that you can hit and videos that help explain some of the topics in here. So I'm just going to kind of do an overview of it with help from the other counties and SWCDs. So it's called the Long Prairie River, The Vision Continues, a Citizens Update, March 18th, 2021. This is the front cover of what's called the Long Prairie River, the Citizens Vision. And I'm hoping that some of the authors of this and the people that were behind this group are here with us tonight. So for a little background, between the years of 1994 and 1997, over 100 citizens and area businesses came together to form what was to be known as the Long Prairie River Stewardship Project. This group eventually published a vision document in 1997 entitled The Long Prairie River, A Citizen's Vision. Quoting from its own introduction, the pages were intended to be a comprehensive plan for the Long Prairie River, except it was not written by hired expert plan writers or hydrologists or geologists or by some other technical specialist, but by a group of people who can only claim expertise as citizens of the Long Prairie watershed. We welcome you today, fellow citizen, to revisit the Long Prairie River watershed from its earliest beginnings to today, and to help us perpetuate this vision nearly a quarter century later. So I think it's probably pretty important that we come to a common understanding. Like I said before, a lot of people don't realize that when we say watershed, it's a piece of land. It's not a district, it's not government, it's a piece of land. And let's watch this video from the MPCA. It's a short one, just so that everybody gets to a common understanding.
Hey, Deja, your sound is not coming through.
Okay, I was told that you guys couldn't hear that, so we won't play the other videos anyway. We didn't intend to, and I'll just kind of speak through this. Let's see here. Whoops. Not sure how to stop it. Ah! Okay. I'm going to try to share my screen again. Sorry, technical difficulties. See if it comes up again. Sorry about that. Can you guys see that now?
Yes.
We can see it, Deja.
All right. We'll stay away from any video. So scrolling on through, give it a little time to catch up here. Okay, so we're just going to quickly look at, like they said, there's 81 different watersheds, and the Long Prairie is the red one in there, and all the blue lines represent other watersheds. And in the image below, it just kind of outlines, again, in black, the Long Prairie watershed, and you can see the county boundaries there. You can see the tail end over here with Morrison. We go all the way over to Douglas here, up into East Ottertail, and a little bit of East and West Ottertail, and a little bit of Wadena, with the majority being in Todd. Now that we understand, or hopefully understand, what a watershed is, we're going to just go through some did you know that facts, just some pretty cool stuff you might not have known about the watershed that you live in. So did you know that over 14,000 years ago, slow-moving ice sheets covered the area that is now described as the counties of Todd, Morrison, Wadena, Ottertail, and Douglas? There were mastodons and muskox in this region, and there were three major, what they call lobes or glaciers, that kind of impacted what the Long Prairie became. The Des Moines lobe and Pink, the Wadena lobe, and the Superior lobe. So from the Wadena and Des Moines lobe, that's the meltwaters from that is where the Long Prairie began. So what the Superior lobe did was it pushed forward like a bulldozer towards the Long Prairie River. When it decided to melt and back up, it left ridges, and these are called moraines. And these are all through Todd County on the east side here, and the larger one over in Morrison County. So what this ended up doing was it took the Long Prairie River that was flowing south, and all of a sudden created an obstacle and a barrier, and the river ended up going north. Now in this map that you see here, did you know that section 15 of Ward Township in Todd County, pictured to the right, boasts one of only two spots in the entire county where bedrock pokes through the soil in the Earth's crust? It originated as magma, and there were mountain peaks here 2 kilometers up into the sky. Bedrock is some of the oldest. You've probably seen it if you climb to the top of mountains. The lines in this area on this granite knob that's there, or bedrock knob, indicate the glacial moving forward and backward, the direction in which it moved. Also, it might impress you to learn that the Kip Mining Company was in Villard Township in 1907 and started a pretty substantial mining and mineral exploration in the area. This shows all the gravel and mining and sand pits that are in the Todd County portion of the watershed today. How about this one? True or false? The city of Long Prairie boasts the strongest earthquake. What do you guys think?
False, up by Browerville.
Okay, that is supposedly true. It says, according to geologic, scientific, and anecdotal evidence, the statement is believed to be true. In 1917, there was a earthquake in Staples at a 4.3 on the Richter scale. In February of 1950, an earthquake was felt 8 miles north of Alexandria. And then maybe some of you might remember the one in Morris in 1975, of course, outside of the watershed.
Yeah, I do. Yep.
Yeah, and it's 4.6, but none of you recall the 5.0 magnitude that rocked settlements near Long Prairie, so it could have been Browerville in the 1860s. There's a cool little button here if you want to experience what an earthquake is like. That's a fun video. And then you might ask, well, was there anybody around in the 1860s?
Sure.
A lot of people may have known, or you've heard or done studies in school about the Dakota and the Ojibwe. The Dakota were kind of here in they're part of the Sioux Nation, and for hundreds and thousands of years, they were kind of in this neck of the woods. The Chippewa or the Ojibwe got forced over in this direction because of pioneers on the East Coast. And they, the Ojibwe tried to be relatively calm and peaceful, but they kind of stuck in the area. In Dakota, the Dakota Sioux stayed down in this area, but they were known to war at times. This is Chief Flatmouth. He's chief of the Ojibwe. And in 1804, that peace kind of got broken because the summer before, the Dakotas had kind of followed a tribe back of the Ojibwe and had kind of slaughtered the village like in an ambush style. So Flatmouth and a couple of the other ones, other chiefs in that area came to right here. This is the Crow Wing, and this is the Long Prairie River. And they were planning some revenge. It probably didn't help that the Dakotas had slaughtered that Ojibwe village, but Flatmouth had already lost a nephew to the Dakota. And the final straw may have been the scalping of his brother down by Lake Charlotte. This is kind of a cool video just showing all the chiefs.
What? No, what happened?
Deja, we lost you. I think Deja got booted off altogether.
Oh my gosh. What do we do to get her back?
Hey, Adam, can you just bring up that presentation and we can work through it?
Yep, give me 1 second here.
Adam, do you have the screen now?
Deja,
Yes.
since you have the presenter right, can you mute everyone and then unmute yourself? We've got a lot of background noise.
Okay. Not quite sure how to do that. We tried.
Deja, I have the host back, so I muted everybody. And you're muted also, so you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
All right, you just tell me when to scroll and I'll keep scrolling.
Okay, thank you. My computer's just not cooperating with me. Okay, so just keep on going. This part you can stop. So there were four kind of original important settlements that started. And the first one is 1846. I know a lot of Long Prairie people know about the Winnebago Indian Agency, or the Ho-Chunk, that were moved from Wisconsin over to Long Prairie. And they kind of acted as a buffer between the two warring tribes of the Dakota and the Ojibwa. They had a pretty rough year, lots of scurvy the first year, but they did stick around until the late 1850s, when the government moved them again down to Blue Earth. You can keep scrolling. In 1955, even though this location is just outside of not Todd County, out of our watershed, it's kind of important. It was an outfitter supply settlement known for its rot gut whiskey and 7 grog shops, but also had 2 churches for those who needed to repent. Old Wadena was infamous for brawls, bribes, and robbery, in which unscrupulous individuals bought large tracts of giant white pines from the remaining Ojibwa for next to nothing. The importance of this is that because Old Wadena and the ox cart trails existed in that area, it brought settlers up by the Long Prairie River. You can scroll down to Alexandria. Alexandria got started by a couple gentlemen. I think Kincaid was their last name or something like that, in 1858. And they were there very shortly before the Dakota Uprising, and then they all skedaddled back to St. Cloud and Minneapolis for a couple years, just for safety reasons. But you can see this is an early shot of Alexandria once it repopulated. And what was kind of cool about that is that's one of the first state roads that was built, that was heading up to Fort Abercrombie. Next. Okay, if you look at this picture right here, this is kind of the general vicinity of what was called Old Hartford. So the Winnebago Agency had been removed by the federal government, but around 1860, somewhere 65, somewhere in there, a gentleman that was heading up the state road in Sauk Center decided to take an excursion on his horse and went up all the way to this area that is kind of east of Browerville, and found gorgeous grasses, fields, all of that. So he decided to go back down, grab his family and 150 head of livestock, and he started his farm here. That was John Bassett. And only 2 months later, people that were going, gentlemen going up towards Wadena, came down the line, or came upstream the Long Prairie River, and one of them settled on the west side of the river, and the other one settled on the east side. And the bridge that's still here today, they actually threw logs down and had a way to cross and visit with each other. So that same location eventually, is a bridge today. So these 3 were the first farmers in the area, and it was only a couple years later when they were taking boats with grains and other commodities up to the railroad in Motley. You can go ahead. So this is the area of Hartford. Up, you just scrolled by it, what it looks like today. It was abandoned when the railroad came through Browerville. You can scroll. This was my canoe trip last summer, and that's the area on the river. Keep going. Again. And of course, every community has its history. So there were some villainous acts, and we're going to call them the 2 axe murders that occurred in the watershed. The first one was 2 German immigrants that came up here. This is Turtle Creek. This was a logging creek. Moraine was a logging creek, and Fish Trap, where they sent the logs down to the Long Prairie River. And so these 2 immigrants were making their home, and one of them ordered a mail order bride. Well, the mail ordered bride got stolen by 2 other gentlemen. And when they found that out, the German immigrants went and burned the cabin down. Well, in retaliation, the abductors came and ended up shooting one and I think bludgeoning the other with an axe. So that's the axe murder. The second axe murder impacted the Long Prairie River forever. And this is an actual human murder, but it is when hundreds of acres of tall stately pines were extinguished from the watershed's northern landscape. In fact, from the whole state of Minnesota. So this whole area, this is what it looks like today with tall, gorgeous pines. So basically, this area was decimated of its forest industry and within 20 years after the first settlers came to the area. So that eventually became obviously an agricultural area instead. So you can kind of keep going. So now you got some tidbits. Anybody have any questions or corrections on any of that information?
I'll just remind everybody, if you do have questions, go ahead and throw them in that chat box along the way. Or again, Daisha doesn't mind if you interrupt her also.
Right. Okay, so we have kind of a cool, interesting history of the Long Prairie watershed. And now I'm going to introduce to you the members of Douglas County that are present and Douglas SWCD. If you guys would unmute your mic and give a quick visual of who you are and introduce yourself real quick.
I'm Jerry Hagenmiller with Douglas Soil and Water Conservation District.
I'm Dave Rush. I'm the Land and Resource Director for Douglas County.
I'm Bruce Lumen. I'm president of the Lake Patoka Property Owner Association.
Okay, thank you. Douglas, do you want to take over from here, or would you like to, how would you like to handle this?
You can keep going, Deja, and we can just add in where we see fit.
Okay, sure. And I am just kind of spiffing through this, guys, because if you want to get on and look at some of the videos and extra little pieces of information that are embedded in this story map, you can certainly do that at any time on our website. So the headwaters of the Long Prairie River begin in Douglas County at Lake Carlos, and here's Lake Carlos right here. And you can see the Long Prairie River. So you can keep scrolling at them. And the Long Prairie watershed is the largest watershed in Douglas County. It's composed of a series of lakes left behind by the retreat of the Des Moines Glacier Lobe. And you can see, I'm sure many of you on the call today are very familiar with these lakes. 12 townships make up the watershed in Douglas County, and there's lakes, farms, industries, municipalities, rural development, there's gas pipelines all through the watershed, prairie and wetland habitat, and the primary tributary of Spruce Creek. There is a second tributary, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, is Calamus Creek, but it was significantly altered with the construction of the Crooked Lake Ditch. And so a lot of that area now drains to the Sauk River watershed. We have Lake Carlos State Park in the area, and the let's see, Spruce Creek Wildlife and Waterfowl Production Area and the Bell River Wildlife Management Area. All in this same area.
Deja, while you have that map up
Yep.
that you had there, I just add a couple of things. This is Dave Rush. So this Long Prairie area in Douglas County is a couple of things. One, it's unique in Douglas County because of the geology of the area. As Deja was pointing out earlier, when the glaciers stopped to the east and melted, they left a tremendous amount of material right in this location. So the headwaters of the Long Prairie have tremendous deposits of sand and gravel, as well as rich aquifers, both confined and unconfined. And the other thing is these lakes are, majority of them are groundwater fed and are somewhat interconnected, not only superficially, but also through that large aquifer system. Lake Carlos happens to be a sentinel lake for the state. The state does monitoring on that, and they're using Lake Carlos to try to determine if changes in population and growth and development, as well as potentially changes in our climate and how that might be affecting lakes in our area. Those of you who probably are familiar with the lake would know, but others, Lake Carlos is one of the deepest lakes in our area. It's 120 some feet deep. So it's, and they've found, some folks that do scuba diving in the lake have found pieces of woolly mammoth bone in the bottom of the lake. The other thing, a couple other things, it's probably the watershed in Douglas County is the most developed area of our county, being that the city of Alexandria is there, but most of our population lives in that part of the watershed. And we're also fortunate enough to have one of the state's first sewer collection systems that's outside of a municipality, which is a good thing, but it also comes with its issues that we have to contend with. So just some really unique features of this area that that make it perhaps different than other parts of the watershed. So thank you.
Cool tidbits, Dave. So this video, which we're not going to play, is a flyover of the area, but feel free to jump on at your leisure. So Douglas County is active in protecting water quality in the Long Prairie River watershed. If you go into their water plan, they kind of have 4 major areas that they feel are important. Obviously, like Dave had said, there's a lot of development in this area. So pressure on the landscape caused by urban and residential development. There's loss of natural habitat anytime you have development. Wastewater and stormwater impacts, another result of development, and water quality overall. So obviously what happens in Douglas County impacts what happens in Todd County. What happens in Ottertail impacts what happens in Douglas. It just goes hand in hand as it goes downstream. This picture here, I don't know, Jerry, if you want to add to that.
This is a conservation project that the Soil and Water took on a couple of years ago. It was tree planting adjacent to a lake that the landowner used to be cropping it there. He enrolled it in a program, and the whole area was planted into trees. So it's basically turned out to be a huge riparian buffer area around the lake here. And one other thing to add, probably on the overall watershed in Douglas County, is this portion in Douglas County is approximately 194,000 acres, and almost 18% of that is water.
Wow.
So the part of the Long Prairie in Douglas is where the majority of the lakes are in Douglas County. And like Dave alluded to, that's where the development pressure is and everybody wants to be. Everybody wants to be on a lake.
And there's beautiful Mill Lake again, and where they kind of, that general area where they would have planted those trees. There are some general lakes that are listed as having the most potential for future impairment, and those include Miltona, Ida, Latoka, Nelson, Lobster, Round, Mary, and Pocket Lakes. I'll let you talk about this too.
Sure. This picture is a property on Mill Lake that we worked with the landowner here where he had some erosion problems along his shoreline, and he had old retaining walls that were failing and a lot of cool season grasses that he maintained in there, and approached us at the Soil and Water District to do some native planting. We did do a little bit of riprap along the lake shore to prevent the undercutting, but the majority of it was a native planting there. And if she scrolls down, or Adam does, you'll be able to see the finished product.
So it's kind of interesting to add to this is if you look beyond that house, there's a lot of clear area there. And that's something we always need to take into consideration too. If we're going to remove the riparian natural area, then we're going to have to armor the lakeside with something. And so that's where that riprap comes in. I was talking with an engineer not long ago, went to Lake Michigan, and he said the whole thing, the entire lake was riprapped. And he said it sort of felt like there was now a cement bowl as opposed to a lake. So goals are always to try to return things back to as much natural as possible. And so you can see in that that planting where the woven fabric is, that there's seeding already popping up through that. And a lot of lakeshore owners will put maybe some pollinators or different types of things in that area to try to get it as natural as possible. I also want to commend Douglas County on their really awesome aquatic invasive species inspection and prevention program. They conduct regular surveys of vegetation populations. They're just going all out and trying to control aquatic invasive species or manage them as much as they can, because they are definitely impact water quality over time. And again, you can look at the two next big threats that are kind of coming our way that aren't here yet that I'm aware of, and that's the stony stormwort and the spiny water flea. If you are in your leisure, click on those. There's quite a bit of information on them. Keep scrolling.
Deja, I would add too, you know, I appreciate your words about our program. And I think one of the things that we see in Douglas County is that invasive species aren't just a county problem. It's a regional and state problem. And so this is one of the areas where I think we really need to do a better job of working together. And we have started to work pretty closely with our neighboring counties to improve the work that we're doing to protect not only our lakes, but everybody's lakes. So that's just a really important thing.
Yeah. Aquatic invasive species and terrestrial invasive species are a problem for everybody. And here's just as you leave the cities in the lake area and kind of go east towards Todd County, they're doing a pretty good job trying to replant a lot of the trees in that area, the riparian area. 24% of the Long Prairie watershed is now forested or riparian forest. Okay, people from Ottertail SWCD and Ottertail County, can you jump on here and introduce yourselves?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris LeClaire. I'm the Director of Land Resource at Ottertail County.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Underhill, and I am with the East Ottertail SWCD.
Oh, I'm John Walkup, Supervisor with West Ottertail Soil and Water.
Do we want to try your video, Ben?
You can try, yeah.
Because now it's on Adam's computer, so it actually might make a sound. Adam, can you click on that?
On this thing right here?
Yep. No sound.
Yes, well, I can just kind of give an overview of what the video was then. Basically, you're talking about kind of the things going on in Ottertail County, and even though between East and West Ottertail, there's not a huge area of the whole watershed, we do have a couple of important lakes that are actually impaired. They've got nutrient issues. One of them you can see right there on the screen there. Nelson Lake is one of those. Otherwise, Twin Lake and Fish Lakes are the other ones. They were listed last time that there was an assessment done on the watershed, and so they've had a couple of legacy issues. Some of them, some of them from quite a long time ago, and so just kind of making sure that we keep an eye on that and continue to work on this area is going to be important for kind of the headwaters of the watershed. It's a pretty rural area. There's a lot of wetlands, there's a lot of water, and there's a lot of pasture and some ag in there too. So it's pretty diverse, and a lot of different action is going to be needed to take in to kind of help things along. And of course, we've got Ottertail split between East and West. So East and West Ottertail have a very good history of working together, and we'll continue to do that for this watershed. And with the county, of course. Don't want to leave Chris out.
We work, we talk to the SWC guys almost daily. So, we're almost, we're partner agencies. We work together very well.
Here's a true or false, and this one Chris actually shared. Ottertail County has the fewest lakes out of all the counties in the entire United States of America. Is that true or false, Chris?
That's false. We have the most lakes of any county in the country. Anybody want to guess at how many lakes we have? We have 1,049 lakes. We have so many lakes, 703 of them don't even have names. They're still classified as lakes. We have so many lakes that our shoreline is equivalent to driving from Minneapolis to Acapulco, Mexico. We have a lot of water in Ottertail County. We want to protect it.
Yeah, it's certainly a beautiful area. And if you could, like I said, if you're enjoying this on your own, there is a nice little flyover to see the area. We're going to just talk about a few surprising animals that are in the Long Prairie watershed. And obviously we're going to start, since we're in Ottertail, with the otters. So obviously going down the river, the Long Prairie River, you're going to see otter. They're relatively common mammal species found today. But that was not the case throughout most of the 1900s. They were almost totally exterminated in Minnesota altogether through trapping and all of that activity. So in the 1980s and 90s, people in the watershed started noticing otters were returning for the first time. Beaver started returning after their kind of slaughter in the 1950s, so a little bit earlier. Apparently, sandhill cranes are a delicious meat. At least that's what the early settlers thought. They were hunted and they were few and far in between. And it was pretty hot news to learn when the population in Todd and Morrison counties started increasing in the late 1990s. Now I know we have them all over our property. Even more impressive was the pair of bald eagles that was spotted in the watershed in 1988. And woohoo, there were 2 pairs by 1995. So now daily I see eagles going down the road. And the big headline of 1922 was that a white-tailed deer was spotted in the watershed. 1. Can move on, Adam. Oh, another cool fact, I didn't know this Minnesota girl, she was about 11,000 years BC. They found her remains in Ottertail County, kind of cool. The Ottertail water plan, we kind of scrunched it up into 2 of concerns, and that's surface water and groundwater, specifically water quality and water quantities for both, and the regulation thereof. There are pictures. It's Tyler Marthaler here. He's the WACA specialist. They look like they may be doing some wetland delineation. There's some soil properties over there. Looks like Chris found some redox. That's kind of noticed and variation in coloring in the soil. And that's an indication of hydrate nature of soil. How often is the soil saturated? Definitely not ideal for waste treatment systems and that sort of thing. Sometimes you got to dig a little deeper, and in an Ottertail, here's an example of a test pit. These are often tested if they're doing like a structural practice or just kind of studying the soil in the area and the health. Sandy water, sandy soils, the water will go down. If a clay soil, it is so finely like silt material mushed together that a lot of times the rainwater will run off of it before it goes down through the soils. I think all the counties participate in some sort of groundwater monitoring through wells. And now we finally have gone eastward to Todd County and Todd Soil and Water. And again, I'm Deja Anton, the Todd Soil and Water District Manager. And Adam, real quick, reintroduce yourself.
I'm Adam Osford. I'm the Planning and Zoning and SWCD Division Director. I was the one that kicked off the meeting to start the night here.
So as the Long Prairie travels into Todd County, you see the first, or one of the first major tributaries, and that is Dismal Creek here. And there's 8 major tributaries contributing to the Long Prairie and Todd County. And of those tributaries, 4 carry significant impairments today. We've got Venowitz, Harris Creek, Eagle Creek, and Marin Creek. 20 of Todd County townships fall within this watershed. The Todd County Water Plan has a couple different priorities from others. The number 1 is the sedimentation of the Long Prairie River. When we took down those riparian forests, we destabilized the soils along the river. So a little piece that I didn't share with you was that the water was no longer navigable for like some of those river boats. In fact, Mr. Bassett, John Bassett, the old Hartford guy, he grounded his boat eventually on sand. The other one is groundwater recharge. You want to scroll? And chemical and nutrient pollution. So manure pollution and chemical typically from wastewater discharge. Conservation in the future will stem from the next generation. If you wanted to click on, not today, but click on that cool little icon down there. There's a really cool piece on what Todd SWCD does at their annual EnviroFest. Keep scrolling. This is a project that SWCD has done a fair number of times throughout the watershed, and this is taking cropland that has been row cropped for years with soybean and corn rotations and planting it into permanent vegetative cover. So you can see what it was before and after, different stages. You can keep scrolling. And another little cool video. Okay, and then eventually it reaches the city of Long Prairie, up towards the north there. That's the packing plant. That's just one of several industries in Long Prairie. And Long Prairie also, if you scroll a little bit more, Adam, is one of the DWSMAs. I think Alexandria has a DWSMA too. That's a drinking water supply management area. And there's 4 total in Todd County. So it's Long Prairie, Browerville, Clarissa, and Eagle Bend. All of our drinking water comes from groundwater, not from surface water. However, Lake Charlotte does feed into and is a recharge for some of our groundwater aquifers. So we want to keep Lake Charlotte clean. Another video to learn about that sort of thing. You can keep scrolling. Those are the 4. So Douglas had a lot of water, and Todd County has a lot of ag. There's 1,500 registered feedlots, from small backyard chickens to large swine, poultry, and cattle operations. Every dot on that map is a feedlot. Has the highest proportion of feedlots in the watershed, but Douglas, Morrison, and Ottertail also have livestock farms as well. There's 55,000 animal units in the Long Prairie watershed alone. And the largest concentration of these, if you really concentrate it down, is on Eagle Creek. That kind of vicinity, Eagle Creek, is impaired for E. coli bacteria. So Todd County, Morrison County, and Douglas County share a nutrient management planner position housed in Todd County. And he works with farmers to help them develop plans to protect our surface waters and keep the soil in good shape. Sometimes we need storage for manure. This is a 400 cow dairy. They were creating, it looks like a Walmart parking lot, but actually it's going to be manure storage. It's so large because they couldn't go very deep with it. There's a required separation to groundwater. So it's large but shallow. And this enables farmers to be able to store their manure and not land apply in the winter. If you look on the map here, you can see that all along the Long Prairie River is pretty, in this area is ag developed, and it is continually in row crops. What's kind of exciting is we're starting to see more cover crops come into the area and be experimented with. This is mustard on the picture on the left. It's kind of a cool, adds good organic material and provides cover on potato fields. Can keep scrolling. We also have a lot of Amish in Todd County, and that's pretty unique. There's kind of some cool videos there. If you wanted to look at that, you can see the waste treatment centers. There's Old Hartford again, tons of irrigation. The Long Prairie watershed holds the highest number of permitted irrigation wells in the county, 156. There's 94,530 gallons per minute. But that is not just for crop irrigation. Obviously, we have deep aquifers for city drinking water, industrial uses, food processing, and wastewater contamination. In the purple, that's all of the deep aquifer wells along the river. So sometimes we have cattle that access surface waters. And this is Marin Creek, also impaired for E. coli. We have done, Todd Soil and Water have done over a mile of livestock exclusion fencing. We've been working with many farmers who opt to do this to protect the creek and to keep their cattle out of the wet holes. Marin Creek is when there's a change in the river and it kind of straightens out, less meanders. And then it hits Fish Trap Creek. And I think it's kind of interesting here. It looks like the river actually bounces off of the road here and then goes around that little high rise and then tucks its way or squishes its way under the railroad bed. Here's some work that we did last year, just an example of one that we did. This is stream bank restoration, and you can see it's kind of staked out there. And if you keep scrolling, what it looks like about a month later. So the vegetation really took off in that area. It'll be a super great area already. There was more wildlife there. People were enjoying the area. We also did a project up in the Motley Cemetery area. And now we're at Morrison County, where where the river ends. It's 96 miles long, where it ends in Morrison County. Morrison, can you get on now?
Yep, we're here. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shannon Wetstein. I'm the Morrison Soil and Water District Manager. And I'm here also today with a few other people from Morrison County. So Lance, would you introduce yourself?
Good evening, Lance Chisholm, Morrison Soil and Water.
How about you, Amy?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Amy Kowalczyk, and I'm the Land Services Director for Morrison County.
Nice. Did you guys want to walk through this?
Yeah, we'd be happy to.
Okay.
So scroll down. So as you guys can see, and many of you know, driving, around in this area, this part of the watershed is heavily forested. We're very proud of the fact that we have done a lot of work in Morrison County to preserve our forests from fragmentation. There are several chunks of land that are fairly significant in size that are permanently protected from any sort of development. We have the Lake Alexander Preserve. We have, the start of the Pillsbury State Forest. And then there's also the State Game Refuge, also known as Camp Ripley, which is 53,000 acres in itself of forested area. And by forested, for those of you in other parts of the watershed, I'm referring to not deciduous as much, but where it transitions to our conifers, so our evergreen species. And as Deja mentioned earlier, other parts of the watershed used to be very forested, but were logged off back in the day. This area of the county and along the ridge of Todd County, some of this terrain is pretty dramatic. It's hilly, it's rugged, and so I'm sure that the early settlers and pioneers found it a lot more difficult to just come up and do that sort of dramatic change on the landscape. This area of our watershed in Morrison County has some of the most significant lakes in Morrison County. Some really nice, beautiful, big lakes, groundwater fed, very good water quality lakes. And I know many of you listening here tonight are representing or live on these lakes. And so thank you so much for being here tonight and listening to this presentation. So Deja, can you scroll down a little bit? Most recently in the news, some of you may have heard, about Lake Chaminade and the excessive high water on that lake. For those of you that come back and view this slideshow, please take a moment to hear the stories of folks on that lake. There are other areas also that are experiencing high water table, groundwater fed. Chaminade does not have an outlet. So there is discussion on pumping water from that lake. So to better inform yourself, view the videos on your own at a later time. Amy, is there anything you'd like to say about this area specifically, how it's unique to the county?
Yes, as Shannon said, a lot of our general development lakes that are the most used, the most populated, the most developed, and really where we see a lot of recreation is concentrated in two corners of the county, in the northwest and the northeast corners of the county. And so this certainly is kind of our premier lake area. We have several resorts, and we have a lot of draw to this area from citizens of Morrison County and around to recreate on these lakes and fish. And also we see a lot of seasonal population here with cabin ownership on these lakes. And so that makes this area of our county very unique. And also then with it being within the Long Prairie watershed, then that connects us with all of these other counties that have some pretty rich water resources. And so we certainly don't compete with them very much, but this is kind of our jewel up in this area.
Thanks, Amy. In a lot of parts of the watershed, we've had significant altered hydrology, and this portion of the story map talks about that. Back in the early 1900s, ditches were put in by horse and manpower, and later again ditches were dug in the 1930s when it was dry, and folks were able to get in there and do that work and then farm on different plots of land. This happened throughout the entire watershed, of course, and up in Morrison County, it's not an exemption to that. But what it has done is when you alter that sort of hydrology and you straighten streams or you dig ditches, it has a direct impact to water quality. You might have an increase in sediment that's released, which impacts our natural, invertebrate communities, fish communities. So back when this was done, many of it was, with the intention to just basically get more usable ground. Now, at this day and age, we know, the impacts of alterations like this, but ditches are still there on the landscape, and it's been changed drastically because of that.
One thing I'll add to this too is this area of the county was probably one of the first to be platted. So those formal plats, we're seeing those were done back in the very early 1900s. And so as you can imagine, the lot sizes then are small, and the development has been there for a long time. So we have a fair amount of non-conforming structures and non-conformities here. And that of course poses a challenge to development and to options and availability of prime land, because it's been developed for a really long time.
So like the other counties, we've developed a water plan and are extremely proud of the work that we've been able to achieve by the goals that have been identified in our water plan. And similar to the other counties, it's been focused on groundwater quality and quantity, protecting our surface waters, and really what Amy alluded to with making wise land use decisions. You know, part of the reason we care so much about this watershed is because our surface water eventually makes it to the Mississippi River. And I think that's important for a lot of people because, of course, the Mississippi River is a source drinking water for millions of people. The work that we do here in this watershed and moving forward is going to impact those people. And I think the money that the state dedicates to this part of the state is going to have significant impacts to those folks, which means it matters, right? It makes that connection. And as an example of that, Amy, would you talk about Fish Trap Lake and the work that was done there?
I absolutely can, and this is a great example of the partnership that Morrison County enjoys with our partner agencies that have very similar goals and objectives for the resource. And so we partner very closely with the Soil and Water Conservation District and also with the Department of Natural Resources on resource protection and coordination. And so this project was really a partnership also then between our local property owners on Fish Trap Lake, which is always something that we are looking to do. And so in 2012, we did receive a grant that the Soil and Water Conservation District administered for us and kind of partnered with them. And we did a systematic inspection of all of the septic systems around Fish Trap Lake. In shoreland, one of the things that's built into state law is some triggers for septic inspection, and that really does go and speak to the protection of the water resources and the value the state puts on those. However, there are some properties that just have there's a lot of properties actually that just never trigger that inspection need. So we did adopt into our ordinance the ability to do a systematic septic inspection. And right on the coattails of that, then we were successful in getting a grant to fund the systematic inspection of every septic system on Fish Trap Lake. And so we had inspected 254 total systems. And out of those, 64 of those were not in compliance. And then of course, followed up with those property owners. And we're happy to say that we have only one that we are still working on. And unfortunately that one's in court to get that one fixed. So that was a real benefit to that area. It really opened our eyes to septic systems in general, as far as correlating. We were able to correlate the vintage of the system and the failure rate and all of that. And so that is something that we're proud of to do. We were happy that we had some willing partners with the Fish Trap Lake Association and with the Soil and Water Conservation District. And so we have at least one lake in the watershed that we're talking about today, the Long Prairie watershed, that is better, a better protection of the resource.
So as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of forested areas here. This is showcasing and showing the Lake Alexander, the Lake Alexander Woods Scientific and Natural Area. If you haven't had a chance, take a drive, go up to this area. It's very beautiful. It's one of my favorite places. It just reminds me of you are in the North Country, right? And it's right in our back door. Also, right next door, we've got Camp Ripley. As I mentioned, it's a 53,000 acre where the National Guard trains. We've worked very closely with camp because they have also an interest in our natural resources. They've got an excellent group of professionals that work out at camp that we work alongside with and that are also working on these same issues. Our office has been the primary partner in leading and furthering the effort of what is called the ACUB program. It's Army Compatible Use Buffer. And what it does is it puts permanent conservation easements on willing landowners' lands, and it pays them basically to limit the development on that parcel from that day forward. And we've had over 300 landowners that have been part of that program. We've protected over 30,000 acres. As you can imagine, camp has a very strong interest in this program because cows and trees make a lot better neighbors than oftentimes people do. Not everyone loves to hear the training efforts of camp. And so moving forward, the goal ultimately is to protect about 75,000 acres of land around Camp Ripley. We've received funding from the Department of Defense, the Lessard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Council, and have partnered with the Nature Conservancy and other partners on the landscape that are interested in also preserving habitat, protecting endangered species, and furthering the goals of protecting and keeping lands intact. Beyond that, we have what's called a Sentinel Landscape in this area. It's a boundary that extends 10 miles outside of Camp Ripley. It extends into Todd County, so definitely in a large portion of the Long Prairie watershed. And through that effort, it was identified at the state level to be a Sentinel Landscape, and then later at the federal level, which has basically coupled other federal agencies, other federal dollars to this area of the watershed to again further the goals of natural resources in the area. And if you click back into the slideshow later, there is a video of the Camp Ripley Sentinel Landscape, and it gives you chills because really it shows how these goals of us preserving water quality and habitat line up with the military's mission. And so the Sentinel Landscape is really about keeping farms, keeping forests, and ultimately, making this area better through improved and additional dollars to the landscape. So thanks, Amy. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, I think as far as that, that's another example of the partnership with the Sentinel Landscape and the ACUB program. That is yet another overlap between the efforts of Camp Ripley, Soil and Water Conservation District, and Morrison County, because those are things that we are certainly paying attention to when it comes to permitting. And so we're paying attention to those easements and what can and cannot be happening on those. And so it's kind of a belt and suspenders approach to making sure that those easements are honored. And so that is something that we are very proud to support and feel very strongly. And it really has, you know, the mission of Camp Ripley is one thing, but then also that overarching protection for natural resources that it provides is another benefit that we certainly hold dear in Morrison County, and are in a unique position to administer a program like this to be able to further both of those goals.
Thanks, Deja. We'll hand it back to you.
And actually, Deja had to log off, so you got Adam back here.
Okay, Adam.
So thank you. That wraps up the tour of the watershed. I posted the link to this story map in the chat a couple of times, so you can access it there. Otherwise, if that doesn't work for you, just reach out to your local county or SWCD office, and anybody should be able to get you access to it. It's just an online program. So I think I'm going to stop my share here. And Chris, are you ready for your portion here?
I am.
Okay.
Let me copy the link in the chat first, and then I'll ask you to relinquish control over to me. Assuming you can hear me.
Yep.
Because you're responding to me. Okay, so I put a link in the chat, and now, Adam, if you want to give me control so I can share my screen.
All right, control should be heading your way.
Okay, here we go. Okay, everybody, so we're going to be taking a survey to get your input on some priority areas in the watershed. So what I'm going to need you to do for the next few minutes is to grab your smartphone, an iPad, a tablet. You can even do this on your laptop through that link that I gave you in the chat. So if you're on your smartphone or your tablet or your laptop, go to your web browser and then go to www.menti.com. The instructions are on the screen. Adam, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
All right. Okay, somebody already put beautiful down. So somebody's got it working. So go to www.menti.com and then use the code 2924-3525, and then you'll get into the survey and you can start answering survey questions. It looks like right now we have one person logged in. So the first question is, what is specific about Long Prairie Watershed that makes you proud to be living or working here? And you'll see the cool thing about this survey software is it's live, and you can see as people start inputting their answers. So we'll give everybody a few minutes to log in and get to the right page and start giving us their answers. We're also going to be able to export these results at the end of the session. So the Technical Advisory Committee, Steering Committee can use these in the future as we move forward through this plan. Last I saw, there was 58 people on.
We're down to 50 now.
We're down to 50. Okay. So we got a few more answers to go. Anybody having any technical difficulties getting into this survey? Any questions on how to do it?
There is a request to post the code in the chat, Chris.
Okay, let me see how to do that here, because with me sharing my screen, just have a little version. Adam, I put it in there. I put it in there earlier. If you want to go, can you see it in the chat?
Yep, I'll recopy it again.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I can't get to the chat for some reason.
Okay. All right, so it's just gonna be reposted here right now. So you can click that link, and then you'll see the access code that Chris has on his screen, the 29243525.
Okay, we're up to about 21 responses. Adam, do you want me to move on, or do we want to wait a few minutes till we get to about 50%? They were at 22. 23.
I'm thinking a lot of the rest of the people are maybe agency or county staff. So I think if you're in that 20 range, you're probably safe to move on.
Okay, so we hit 23. So that's kind of our metric for the rest of the show. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. So you'll see right on your smartphone, your tablet, whatever device you're using is just going to go to the next question. Our life impacts the environment on our property, big or small, in some way every day. Name one environmental concern for your property or home. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to the next question. So get your answers in there. We're at that 23-ish number. Oh, now we're at 24. We're getting a few more. We'll give it a few more seconds. These are some good responses. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so this is a ranking. So I don't remember how many you can vote for. If you can only vote for one or many, your phone will tell you. But when considering changes on the property, farm, homestead, etc., what is your most important consideration? And you'll see the answers there in front of you on your phone. So please vote for what is your most important consideration. We'll give it a few more seconds for people to get their final answers in before we move on to the next one. All right, we're going to move on. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Following the information provided this evening, what do you think might be the priority concern for Douglas and Ottertail County? There are 11 choices there. The 11th one is other. If somebody chooses other, we might call on you and ask you what that other concern might be. You can always just put it in the chat as well for our records. Is there anybody on the call that selected other as an option? If so, speak up, or you can put in the chat box what your other concern is. So we have it for tonight's, or because I think Adam is recording this. Okay, we're at about that 24, 25 number. So we're going to move on. Get your votes in. Next question. What do you think is a priority concern for Todd and Wadena counties? Kind of same information, but for these counties. Again, if you select other, type in the chat box what your other concern is. Adam, I can't see the chat box. Are you getting any responses for those other categories?
Nope, there's been no chats coming in.
Okay. All right, I think we're going to move on. Get your votes in. Once we get into that 20 range, we'll move forward. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, same set of criteria. What should be the priority concern for Morrison County? Same instructions as the last few slides. All right, we'll give it a few more seconds. Get your votes in. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, collectively as a whole, what should be the #1 priority water concern for the watershed? This is a word cloud. So it's an open-ended question. Okay, we'll give it a few more minutes. We're getting into that 20 range. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, this is 2 answers. Do you feel each county and section of the watershed has fair representation when it comes to decision making about the watershed? Yes or no? Okay, we'll give it a few more seconds. Looks like everybody got their votes in pretty quick on that one. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, next question. In your current understanding, how are these plans paid for when put into action? Local property taxes, landowners' pockets, or clean water funds collected through state taxation? All right, we'll give it a few more seconds. People are getting their votes in quick on this one. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, next question. True or false, through this plan, there will be additional layers of government. Okay, we'll give it a few more seconds. We got one more question to round out this survey. All right, we're at 25. That's about the max we've been hitting all night. So the next question. Do you support planning efforts for the Long Prairie watershed, even if some of these efforts aren't in your own immediate backyard? Okay, I think we hit 25. So that ends our survey. So Adam, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll export the results of tonight's survey and get them to you.
Sounds great. Thank you for doing that, Chris. And that really wraps up everything that we had planned for tonight. It went a little bit longer than we anticipated, so we really thank everybody that stuck with us and stayed to the end to provide all their input. There's nothing better than engaged citizens, and we really appreciate everybody being here. If you look in the chat box, I posted one more link. It's our Todd County website, but it's our one watershed, one plan for the Long Prairie River, where we keep all of our meeting minutes, agendas, other information. We're going to try to post this recording of this meeting. We'll post the recording to that website and hopefully the story map also. It's a good place to go and get information or contact information. So just a good resource there also. There's a question here from Lance. Did we tell what the end state of the plan does? Oh, sure. So if I understand your question, Lance, the goal of this plan here is for us to get local funds. On a watershed base, we'll get a lump sum of funds to do projects on the landscape with landowners based on the priorities laid out in this plan, which is the reason why your input here today is so important, so we know how to move forward and best implement the funds that we're going to get. And hopefully that answers your question there, Lance. Otherwise, if you have further, okay, thanks, Lance. So otherwise, if you have other questions, please reach out to your local county or SWCD office, visit our website, try to find that story map, click on some of those videos. There's lots of information out there, and we look forward to everybody's participation as we're moving forward. Outside of that, I'll thank everybody again, and that will conclude our meeting for this evening. Thanks again.